Hey, welcome to Tank Talk. I'm your host, Bob Tanker. And this evening's guest is Senator Julian Cyr. And Senator Cyr is our representative from the Cape and Islands and just about all the Cape and the 2 islands. And I'd like to thank you. I know I can't believe this because we were just talking a little bit of this is your 5th term.
Well, I'm running for my 5th term, but I'm in my 4th term. 8 years I've been the state senator.
8 years. It seems just
like, right? Doesn't it seem like I was the
like
new
yesterday.
guy? What the hell?
When you first came here, I said to myself, it
Who's
can't be
this kid?
going on 5 years already, 5 years. How you been doing?
We're good. Certainly it's been a busy time. But when I take stock of the last 8 years, 4 terms, running for my 5th term, really, I feel like I've been able to get twice as much done as I thought I could. For Islanders, for Cape Codders, we face some pretty strong headwinds, right? This housing crisis, which was an issue here for 20 years. The pandemic put that on steroids. But we just passed a really significant law I want to talk to you about.
What do we do? What is the next term when you win this election here? When you win this one, what can the island expect?
Well, I think we're going to continue to work on housing. So Governor Healy signed into law this summer the Affordable Homes Act, which is a $5.16 billion investment in housing. Right? We have a housing crisis across Massachusetts.
It is.
Nowhere is it worse. Martha's Vineyard, maybe Nantucket's a little worse. We got big problems in my neck of the woods in the Outer Cape too. But
when you go to the Cape and you get to I don't. It's past Dennis and maybe Howard. Then it's an area before it gets to Provincetown that it's pretty bare. But I imagine because it's not a lot of housing there.
We face the same. So on the Outer Cape, right? I grew up in Truro. I live in Provincetown now. The Outer Cape towns are facing many of the same challenges. That we have here on the island.
What is it? What are the major challenges?
I mean, so broadly speaking, right? We're on an island. We're on a peninsula. We've done a really good job around conservation.
Right.
And we're a very desirable place, right? And particularly with the advent of remote work, folks who have the wealth to be able to afford to live here. There's a real demand for a very limited housing supply, and increasingly, I think we're trying to figure out, as an island and in my role as a state, how do we subsidize housing for people, not just of low income, right? Where traditionally we've had affordable housing, but we're going to have to subsidize housing for most all year-round working people who don't yet own a home or going to inherit a home, right? That includes me, right? I don't own a home. I rent, and we now are in a predicament where for an islander to afford the median home price here, you got to make like $450,000, $500,000 a year. Yeah, which those jobs don't, if they exist here, I don't know where they are.
My house was listed for $1.4 million. If I hit the lottery for $300 million, I wouldn't buy my house for $1.4. It's ridiculous. That's crazy.
And business owners have been, grappling this for a while, right, with providing housing for the workforce. I was just touring earlier today the Navigator Homes site, which is really exciting. This a greenhouse model, nursing home, but what's all around it? It's housing, and it's housing for hospital employees and for the nursing home employees, right? Because that's what we're going to have to do. So the Affordable Homes Act, it's a big deal. What's included in it is something called the seasonal communities designation, which is a policy that we cooked up with island housing advocates and folks across the region, and this is going to give our towns the tools we need to begin subsidizing year-round housing.
Let me ask you a question, because this is important. It was something, and this is probably part of it, that if you have a certain space on your property, you could build a 900 square foot piece and you could rent it out to a person, or not to a family member, but to a person. And I'm saying to myself, but in doing that, they're almost demanding that you put in a $30,000 septic system. So that's another $30,000. Like in my house, right, I have an 8x8 septic system that flows into a 10x10. Well, I had a person come over and check my system, the septic, right? And he looked at me and said, Bob, he says, that 10x10 you have, it's got less than an inch of water in it. So that means the 8x8 is taking care of the house for me and my wife. I said, So if I built my garage and turned it into a 24 by 24, why would I have to put in another $35,000, $40,000 septic unit if I got two here? That's the thing that a lot of people are looking at. It's the additional money for septics. And how do we handle that?
Well, and wastewater is a really kind of key piece here. If you look at housing and what we need to do in housing, right? We need the policies that we just put into place, right? Year-round deed restrictions, the ability for municipalities to provide housing to municipal workers, right? Teachers and firefighters. You couldn't do it until we just passed this law that I was the lead author on. The ability to have a year-round housing trust, right? The ability to have a land bank, a housing bank, excuse me. To work. So you've got that piece. Then you've got the revenue piece, right? How do we pay for this? This has been the transfer fee piece, which I can talk about. And then to your question, wastewater is sort of the third leg of the stool around housing. We've really worked to expand tax credits to make upgrades to septic systems. I love the charge on this. We tripled there's an existing Title V septic tax credit. Only went up to a couple $1,000s. We raised that, tripled it to $18,000. So that's going to help people. Like you say, if you're upgrading your septic system, you can deduct in your taxes, get a tax credit for that. So that's sort of really good news.
That's
the other piece in this, I think as island towns begin to grapple more with water quality and with the needs for sort of denser housing for year-round workforce, sewer expansion in the 3 down island towns that have sewer systems is going to be key, and then figuring out water quality management on the 3 upper
Why
island
can't
towns.
we, as an island, I'm looking at this as an island. Nantucket can do this because they're one.
I know.
Aruba could do this because they're one. But on the Vineyard, we have 6 towns.
Yep, 6 towns.
And I'm looking at, why don't we develop a system, island-wide, put it someplace up by the airport or someplace by the state forest, someplace that would handle all our sewage system, and then we could be free and be able to use the land with more opportunities than we are right now. Why can't we do that? What is it that is stopping them?
So probably getting the 3 towns together on it. Yeah. What we've done is Representative Fernandez and I and the rest of the Cape and Islands delegation created the Cape Cod and Islands Water Protection Fund. So this is a fund that island towns are able to join through a vote of their select board. But this takes a 2.75% surcharge on room occupancy, hotels, motels, Airbnbs, puts it into a dedicated fund just for the Cape and Islands. The fund has been in operation for, this is its 4th year. In that time, $204 million in other people's money has been generated by the fund and has gone to 8 towns on Cape Cod. Vineyard towns could join today. This would, really subsidize wastewater projects and costs. Edgartown, I think, is facing $117 million project. 25% of that cost, so over $25 million, would be paid for by the fund if the town decides to join. So the island towns are sort of looking at coming in. But wastewater here is a really key part, not only of environmental stewardship, but of the housing solution.
Here's your question. This summer, we had the unfortunate of the DCR come in and evict people from the state forest. And in doing that, a lot of them lost their personals. We heard that you were not happy with that situation. Are they having this type of situation on the Cape as well? Are we the only ones facing, people living in the woods? In the summertime, I can understand it, but we have people living in the woods in the winter here.
I mean, we're seeing a level of homelessness and unhoused people across Massachusetts, right? And that's really driven by this housing crisis that we have. That's not unique to us. I was furious about when this really unfortunate incident occurred, and I have been trying to get the Department of Conservation and Recreation to pay attention to the state forest because we've been so worried about fire risk, right? This is a really sizable portion of the island. A lot of we just haven't done good fire management. We've had challenges in keeping staff here. And so, when they didn't really take the time to attend to that, but, to really displace, over 24 people, adding insult to injury, bringing in an off-island contractor who hauled all these personal belongings away, off-island. I mean, and look, I've spoken to the DCR commissioner numerous times. He's going to be on island, I think, next week for a public meeting, which we've really encouraged them to do. And really, we've got to chart chart a new path forward here. Yes, on fire management. Yes, on treating people humanely who are living in the state forest. Only, they don't want to be living there. I mean, this is their only
they don't
option.
want to be there. But one thing, those were in the state forest, but we have them in other parts of the woods that actually the states, only the towns have jurisdiction over. But like I said, we need to find housing and provide housing. Not everybody wants to own a home, but everybody wants a bed to sleep in, at least at night and whatnot. The other main thing that the islanders, that we've heard all along, is the transportation on the boats. This summer, they've been horrific. You know what I mean? The individuals, we had breakdowns. We had employees, and consequently in the summertime, where the island has grown. Now, on any given day in the summertime, we have 150,000 people here now. And people are taking the boats, bringing cars back and forth. And when a boat doesn't run, how could we, as a state and an organization, better handle this situation?
The Steamship Authority is the island's lifeline, and we need the Steamship Authority operating, operating at full capacity. I've been talking to the governor about this issue. Actually, the governor was on island when she came over. She was here in June, and we actually rode on the steamship over together. In the captain's, with the captain, and spoke about a number of the concerns. They've got big staffing issues. The way they staff, they can't really recruit captains. Is a major problem. They need interoperability of their vessels. So one of the things I was proud to deliver, we raised their bond cap so they could borrow the sufficient money needed to buy they're buying, I think, three identical
boats.
of these identical boats that are interoperable.
Right.
That's going to make a difference, right? Around operations.
But it's personnel. If it's personnel, and my thought, and I talked to one of the guys on the boat. I said, "Do you guys have a relationship with Mass Maritime?" I said, "Wouldn't it be great if you had a relationship with them and their
bring
students?"
on that talent and staff.
I said their students could internship, especially during the summertime, as part of their coursework, and come and work on the boats. I said, and they can learn to drive the boats. I said, and there's your captains in the future.
I mean, we've made clear in no uncertain terms that the current there's been unacceptable lapses in service that has to be fixed. I think there's going to be an opportunity. We're going to see a change of leadership now in the Steamship Authority. We're hoping that will help. We pushed for the Steamship Authority. Dylan and I pushed to have them bring on someone just dedicated to operations, which I think has helped. But really, I think this is an opportunity in the coming year. We're going to have I want to see a national search, and bring in the best talent possible to be running the Steamship Authority.
How is your support for the steamship with other senators and representatives from not the Cape area?
Yeah, so
how do they, when those things come up on the Senate floor or the floor, and they're looking at you saying, what are you talking about?
I mean, they usually, with island-specific issues, they defer. We defer to the senators who it's in their district. Right? So they listen to me, to Senator Moran, Representative Fernandez.
And you get strong support from the other ones?
We
when it's a
did.
vote for money or whatnot?
We were able to, in the last 2 budgets ago, in the Senate, we increased their bond cap, their borrowing limit by 50%, and I had support for that. And I think from a broader transportation perspective, we have a number of transportation authorities in the state, right? The MBTA.
Right.
To the Steamship Authority's credit, right?
Right.
They pay for themselves out of the fare box. They're not getting any state money for their operations.
Right.
So for budget writers on Beacon Hill, they're, I think, more focused on the MBTA, some other big, the T. We got a lot of challenges there. And look, I think it's really good that the Steamship Authority is able to support itself in the fare box, but we need consistent service.
It's hard to get off.
Better communications. This damn website, you guys can't update a website. These are the things that we're really pushing them to. And I think also it's important that we have vibrant, fresh leadership on the Port Council. One of the things that Dylan and I have talked about is some sort of reasonable level of term limits. Maybe you serve for, I've talked to Jim Malkin about this, right?
Yeah.
You serve for 8 or 10 years. But just in making sure there's strong oversight and partnership.
That's right.
Look, we need them to be doing the best work they can. They've got some work to do. They know that. I think there's an opportunity with new leadership.
The island people, especially during the summer months, Senator, it's hard for them to get off island, especially the elderly that have to have their doctors. I'm working with the veterans. They have to go off. And when they go off, they either got to go to Hyannis, but most of the time, they got to go to either Rhode Island or New Bedford.
Yeah.
And to get transportation, it's tough sometimes, you know what I mean? You got to pull teeth. They send me their information. I send it over to the steamship. They email it back to them if they can get the situation done. And I just think that if there's some way that they could, and they give us a break as far as fares are concerned, but they need to give us a little bit of a better break when we need to go and get to go. The other thing that came up, one of the things that came up is when we look at our agriculture on the vineyard and we look at the fishing industry, and then the big thing is coming up now nationwide is climate change.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What just happened in Florida and in Georgia and Tennessee and North Carolina, man, that is devastating. Over 100 and something people died. That Hurricane Katrina didn't do that type of damage just in New Orleans. This particular Helena hit 3 or 4 or 5 states.
Yeah.
And look at the work, look at the damages. I look on television and says, I don't know how they're going to clean this place up. You know, so how does the industry, how does the climate change going to affect our industry from Provincetown's fishing area, agriculture, and us? How do you guys handle that?
We're already seeing the effects of the climate crisis. You know, if you look at the Gulf of Maine, right, which is the broader kind of water body we're part of, the Gulf of Maine, New England waters are warming faster than almost anywhere in the world.
Our waters affecting the lobster season, right?
Well, of course, and with acidification as well, as the pH of water is changing, it's affecting, you know, not only our lobster fishery, clams, oysters, you know, Katama's oyster industry, right, and all that. This stuff's delicious, but you know, when the pH of the water changes, these mollusks can't build their shells, especially when they're spat. I actually co-led an ocean acidification task force several years ago. We came up with a whole series of recommendations. In the new session, we're going to be taking up a major environmental bill, and I'm hoping we can address ocean acidification, also coastal resilience. You know, we've got to find ways to buttress certain parts of our community and also make some hard choices, right? There's some parts of our infrastructure we've got to really shore up. There's others that might not make sense for us to,
How do
right?
you do that? Who do you work with outside the legislature to give you the answers that you need to direct the funds to a Pacific area?
So I'm on Governor Healy's convened a coastal resilience task force, and I'm the legislator from the Senate who's representing the body. And you know, we've got you know, certainly experts from various agencies, coastal zone management and others, environmental agencies, as well as, you know, all sorts of stakeholders, right?
And colleges, universities?
You know, trying to come together and be like, all right, how do we figure this out? On coastal resilience, there's a lot of thought about coastal resilience districts. This is something actually Nantucket is pioneering where, you know, you have a water district or a fire district. Well, this would be an overlay, a coastal resilience district, where you could take a certain neighborhood or area of coastline and say, all right, you know, these businesses and homes are vulnerable. We're going to consider this, you know, as a whole. So that's something to stay tuned to in the next session. But look, the climate crisis is very severe. I mean, look, we are leading. You know, we're leading the nation, of course, certainly with the nation's first offshore wind farm and other initiatives. But we got a lot of work to do, and it's not all smooth sailing, right? As islanders know.
No, I'm looking at the disaster down there in the south in Florida and those places in Georgia. And I'm saying to myself, my grandson had to go back to Georgia, and he was just outside of Atlanta, and he called up and he says, "Poppy," he said, "Graham," he says, "the only thing that happened to our house is that no trees came down, but it was a little water out in the front and the thing." He said, "But we got by it." And then my other niece in North Carolina, she said, "We were to the west a little more." Than what the damaging. It is.
I mean, we haven't, you know, we've had pretty intense nor'easters, and we've seen what that has done to our beaches. But we haven't had a major hurricane since, you know, Hurricane Bob.
Bob was the one.
I was in preschool, but I have fond memories of playing in all the down trees
Tell
during
me something.
Bob. But
I've heard about this blue economy. Talk to us about, because I don't know if many people know what's the blue economy. So what's it stand for?
The blue economy, in many respects, is here, right? So the blue economy is economic activity and industries associated with our waters.
Okay.
So that's, aquaculture, our fisheries. It's also, marine research, just across the Sound, Woods Hole, Oceanographic Institution, Marine Biological Laboratories, right? These are the leading entities in the world in marine science. And so Blue Economy is just saying, what Blue Economy is really, really saying is like, we're going to invest in our coastal economy. In many ways, islanders and Cape Codders have always made a living and livelihoods,
Yes.
off of the water.
Yes, they
in
have.
different eras. And so, the focus on the Blue Economy is to, revisit some things that we've done for a long, long time, to invest in science, invest in, new initiatives like offshore wind and others.
What about like the fishing? I get on my email at home the updating on the fishing. What fish you can take, when you can, when you can't, size fish and everything else. Okay. And when you listen to some of the old timers, the old fishermen, and when they used to fish, they said, well, if they don't take the bait fish from way out, then the fish that come in will be productive and we can produce. But if they deplete the bait fish, then we're not going to have it. Like this year we have a bass bluefish tournament here.
Derby, of
That's
course.
the Derby. And this year was no bass. The bass are not. Because what happens, they say that the bass, if you, in the season, you can keep a bass from 28 to 31 inches. Anything over, you got to throw it back.
Yep.
Anything under, you got to throw it back. So therefore, the bass is out. Now, I'm saying, why? What is the reason? And is the same length or rules go the same from, say, Maryland up to Maine? Are they the same thing? Because at one point in time, years ago, Rhode Island had a different size than Massachusetts. I'm saying to myself, well, that doesn't
make any sense.
No.
I mean, look, consistent. We have some coordination across states. There's an Atlantic Marine Fisheries Council. Actually, my recently departed colleague, Sarah Peak, who's a longtime state rep in the Outer and Lower Cape, has represented Massachusetts on that council, so we can have some coordination. But we continue to see changes in fish population, and really trying to understand what's causing it from year to year. And sometimes it has to do with with ecology, the environment. Sometimes it just has to do with the water, right? If the water really cools off and the bass will disappear. If the water stays warm into the off season. So these are sort of important questions. We really try to.
Would the fish and everything begin to adapt to that water temperature?
Well, I think.
Or would they move?
No, I mean, I think we know that they migrate, right?
They migrate.
I mean, look, you can look at the lobster fishery, right? Where the lobster fishery in Long Island Sound and in Connecticut and even off of Rhode Island it's kind of non-existent increasingly, right?
Wow.
Because as the waters have warmed, lobsters have migrated, right? And I think you're continuing to see that, right? Wow. Particularly in an area of the world where our waters are just warming so rapidly here in the Gulf of Maine and south of the Cape. So we've got really big challenges.
Your challenge,
can't solve it all, but
your challenges on the Cape are the seals out there. And the people
and the sharks.
Well, the sharks. But has that affected with the sharks being out there? Because the Cape is everybody wants to go to the Cape. From any place.
Yep.
Has that, with all the seals and the sharks out there, has that really affected the tourism?
No, it hasn't. And if anything, I think there's a whole host of tourists who are really drawn to and really attracted to.
Really?
If you want to see great white sharks, like an apex predator, right? An apex predator, that's a sign of a really healthy, robust ecosystem.
Right.
One of the places where you can see great white sharks closest to shore is on the Outer Cape, is the National Seashore. Right. We've worked really hard to make sure our towns have resources to respond, and then also that we do some public education.
Right.
Look, Dr. Tankard, how I swim at Coast Guard Beach or Boston Beach or Longnook Beach in Truro today is different than how I swam when I was a little kid, right? You'd be in the water with abandon.
No.
Now I'm up to my waist, but hey, it's still beautiful and nice. And really, I think that has been part of
Do you have
an
patrols
ecological
going
restoration.
back and forth all the time?
Not patrols, but there are some lifeguarded beaches, and then
Okay.
the towns all have ATVs.
Okay.
They're able to readily reach folks. We also try to have getting cell service at the beaches. I mean, Islanders know cell service at the beach can always be a challenge.
Right.
So we've worked on that. We haven't had any shark incidents
Okay.
since 2018. But we've really worked on the public education side of it.
One of the things that have come up, and I need to know this myself. What is PFAS?
PFAS. So
What's that?
These are per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. These are forever chemicals that were manufactured in the post-war era and have been used on a myriad of products. These forever chemicals are very good at water resistance and at fire suppression.
Okay.
So they were used in firefighting foam. They're put in firefighting gear, non-stick pans,
Okay.
non-iron shirts.
Right.
They have been really widely used. And what we've learned in recent years, and what the corporations knew much earlier, didn't tell us, is that these forever chemicals are really bad for your health. If they're in your water supply, it's really not good. Other ways that you're exposed to them.
Right.
So we've been really working on this issue. The Hyannis Water District has had PFAS for a number of years.
Okay.
We've worked on this issue across the state. I've been the Senate lead on this issue. Convened an interagency task force to outline kind of all our policy priorities. And in this session, I filed an omnibus bill, the Mass PFAS Act, that remediates existing PFAS in our environment. It bans PFAS in consumer products like clothing and cookware and child's products, does some work around agriculture, and then bans PFAS in firefighter turnout gear. The firefighter turnout gear piece, we got that passed and signed into law. So by 2027, you're not going to be able to have turnout gear that firefighters are wearing that has PFAS in it. Right, there's been a major exposure risk for firefighters. Part of the reason we think why we see a higher rate of cancers and other disease that firefighters face. So that was an initial win, and we're going to come back and get the Mass PFAS Act passed. I will say this: last year in the budget, trying to understand PFAS and its effects on Martha's Vineyard, we secured a $65,000 grant for the island to study PFAS in the water.
Thank
So
you.
we're waiting on those results, right? So we can kind of figure out the lay of the land here. So definitely working on PFAS is a critical issue that we're working on.
Listen. Before we go, we got
Yeah.
about 30 seconds. I just want you to answer this question. On November 26th, Martha's Vineyard in Nantucket.
game.
In the game
The
in
game,
Fenway Park.
the game at Fenway. I'll see you there.
Okay, you going?
I'm gonna try to go. I gotta figure out like the
You should-
family.
Would you be up here in the State House at the time?
We wouldn't. Then in November we wouldn't be in session, but this is pretty special.
Do you have an office, and you have an apartment in
We
Boston?
have an office in Boston,
An
and we have a
apartment?
district office. Yeah, no, I stay with friends when I go
Okay,
up there.
okay.
But
They don't give you guys apartments?
no,
Man, that should be part of the job.
I'm like, hey, if you know anyone who's got one, I'm looking for one. Yeah, that's really
I'm not going to ask
exciting.
you who you're going to vote for. I'm not going to say.
Who I'm gonna vote for president?
No, for the football game.
Oh no, I can't choose sides.
No, you
but-
can't. For the game, but it's going to be. We're all excited.
Yeah.
And we're all going to.
How did you make that happen? Who made this happen?
I don't know who made it happen, but it's got to be somebody that knew somebody.
Yeah.
One of the owners at Fenway to be able to make that happen.
amazing.
Knowing that the two teams are arch rivals and probably one of the biggest arch rivals in the country for years.
Yeah, I love it.
Listen, I want to wish you the best.
Thank you, Dr. Tankard.
I've heard nothing but positive things on the island, and I've been here for almost 100 years about you and your service and your support. So I want to wish you the best, and I know that you're going to win. And someday, just someday before, well, I only got 2 years before I turn 80, but in someday, I'm going to see you probably walk into the big house up there in Washington, in the Dome.
We'll see.
Thank
Thanks,
you for
Coach.
coming.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you
Good
for
to
coming.
see you.
And thank you for tuning in to Tank Talk. Until next time, this is your host, Bob Tankard, saying good evening.